Heyo everyone, and welcome to the Magnezone. I'm Drew.
Austin.
Marcus.
And today we're going to be doing our top 5 rules for getting better at Pokemon.
So the three of us have very different play styles. Marcus is more offensive, I'm very defensive, and Drew's very balanced. And even though we have different opinions on how the battle should go and how we like to conduct it, we all agree on these 5 rules we've come up with together. And no matter who you are, what your team is, if you follow these rules, this should help you up your game a little bit.
So with that, we'll start with number 5, change it up. A lot of the time when you're playing, you have a Pokemon out that's faster than your opponent, and you hit it hard, but it doesn't quite kill. Well, rather than using the same move, sometimes it's going to be a lot smarter to switch your move in case they want to switch, or really, it just, as long as that move will still kill, a lot of the time it's just going to be a better play.
Let's say that you're leading with a Keldeo, and you secret sword something. Well, it doesn't quite kill. So how about instead of secret swording the next time, if your Icy Wind will still kill, it's better to do the Icy Wind because, you know, they might have a Latios and they switch into Latios to resist it. Well, then you're just in trouble because they're outspeed. So if it's going to kill, then it's good to switch up the moves.
Instead of switching up the moves, you can also bluff the choice item. And since Latios is a prime example of this, Latios is so fast, it outspeeds, I would say, a good 35% of everything in OU. Well, you can outspeed that. Say you sideshock a Conkeldurr, well, he thinks you're Specs, so he's going to bring in his Latios. And off chance that you win the speed tie, which you probably will, you can Draco Meteor in the face or Dragon Pulse, whichever you run.
Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is number 4. Don't overpredict the first turn. And this is something that I am personally, I'm very guilty of. One of my examples is I like to run Spexed Rotom Cut. One time, I led with Rotom Cut, and my opponent had his Hippowdon. Now I'm thinking there's no way his Hippowdon's going to stay in and take the Leaf Storm, so I decide I'm just going to go ahead and Volt Switch out and get the Switch initiative. So I Volt Switch, and he puts up his rocks. Well, now I'm stuck there using Volt Switch. He's got up his free rocks, and as I'm switching out, he can either Earthquake something for free, or even just keep whirlwinding and shuffling the team around, adding up damage.
And another really important thing that can show your opponent is how you're going to be playing this match. If you overpredict right off the bat, they know that you're not afraid to go for that, and they might predict you to overpredict in the future.
Number 3, know your team. Now this is saying know what hits your team can take and what it cannot take. I like to use Hatches, so I know what Hatches can take. I know it can take a Scarfed Ice Beam from Politoed, but it cannot take a Specs Ice Beam from Politoed.
And another key point when you're learning your team and knowing your team, you got to know your weaknesses and you got to know your strengths. If you know that your team is weak to a common type, like let's say you have a big ice weakness in your team, then you want to look out for people that commonly carry ice. You want to look for Pokemon that are going to give your team a rough time and hopefully go for those first. Try to focus on that. Maybe you can trap them if you're running a trapper, or you need to you just keep that in mind. Know your weaknesses. But on the other side of that, you know your strengths as well. And if you know that, let's say you're looking at your opponent's team and they have a large weakness to your Keldeo, you gamble with Keldeo, and so you want to take out their counter to Keldeo, which might be a Jellicent. If you can focus on getting that Jellicent out of there, then your Keldeo is going to be free to sweep the rest of the team.
And not only those, but you should also look at the exact speed of your Pokemon and kind of memorize the base speeds of other Pokemon too. That way, if you see your opponent's Dragonite gets a +1, you'll know, oh, is that going to outspeed my Scarfed Pokemon? So that's something really important that you got to look at too. And not only what hits your Pokemon can take, but the hits that your Pokemon deal out too. And with that, we'll go on to our number 2, play different tiers. I personally can't stress this one enough. It may not be our number 1 choice, but it is absolutely important when it comes to becoming a better player. You'll occasionally, at least, see a Pokemon, say you're only playing OU. Well, if you had only played OU, what are you going to do when a Linoone comes in and you've never seen this thing before? You might protect a Scout and see what it's going to do. Well, if you've played lower tiers, you know that Linoone's just going to belly drum and then sweep your team with extreme speed. So you really should play different tiers. And not only that, but it just gives you more experience playing the game and can get you a little outside of your regular bubble. And frankly, it can inspire you to run those sets in higher tiers too, which can stop your opponent's prediction and really prediction is the #1 thing in this game. If you can outpredict your opponent, 9 times out of 10, you'll be able to beat them. And that 10th time is just going to be due to maybe a bad team, maybe a bit too gimmicky of a team, or maybe they just have an off-the-wall Pokemon that your team happens to be weak against.
And that's going to bring us to our number one rule, number one tip for you guys, which is use some original sets. And the reason that we suggest this is because it all comes back to prediction, like Drew said. It's if you're using original sets that people are not familiar with or not expecting, then they're going to mispredict. And that one turn of misprediction can really, really change the tide of the battle. There's really no downside to it, as long as it's not too gimmicky. You want to use things that are original and the opponents aren't going to see coming. And when we're talking about original sets, we don't mean Heatran with a Shuckaberry. You know, you don't want to be so gimmicky that it becomes not effective. So you still use the air balloon; it's still good, or whatever else it may be. But as long as it's not too gimmicky, you're going to want to have at least a couple of Pokemon with original sets because it's just too good. And if your opponent mispredicts, that's really all there is to it.
And don't be afraid to try things out. Not every set that you're going to make is going to be, the next big set. But really, our #1 rule: use some original sets. When it comes down to it, it's all about prediction.
And that about wraps it up. Let's review our top 5. We have Change It Up. We have Don't Overpredict on the First Turn, Know Your Team, Playing Different Tiers, and use some original sets. Next time, hopefully we'll be covering the top 5 rules of team building, making proper teams.
Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you'll join us in our next video. And if you enjoyed this, go ahead and like the video and click subscribe. This has been Drew,
Austin,
Marcus.
And we're the Magnezone.